The world is not fair. It never was, and it never will be. This isn't pessimism, it's realism. And understanding this fundamental truth is the first step toward building real strength and achieving meaningful success. For too long, we've been conditioned to believe that fairness governs outcomes, that merit always gets rewarded, and that playing by the rules guarantees success. But look around. Do you see fairness determining who succeeds? Do you see the most ethical people always winning? Or do you see something else entirely? People who understand the game as it actually is, not as we wish it were. You've been told since childhood that life will reward fairness, that if you work hard and play by the rules, good things will come. Yet you watch as others who seem less deserving advance faster, gain more opportunities, and achieve better outcomes. This creates frustration, bitterness, and a sense of powerlessness that weakens your ability to succeed. Here's where Machiavelli's insights become invaluable. He didn't write about how the world should be. He wrote about how it actually is. He understood that human nature is complex, that power dynamics shape outcomes, and that those who understand these realities navigate them more effectively than those who don't. Machiavelli observed, "Men are ungrateful, fickle, liars, and deceivers. They shun danger and are greedy for profit." This isn't cynicism, it's awareness. When you understand human nature as it is, rather than as you hope it might be, you can make better decisions and create better outcomes for yourself. The belief in fairness as a governing principle creates a particular form of weakness. It makes you dependent on others' sense of justice, rather than your own capability to create results. It turns you into someone who waits for recognition rather than someone who builds undeniable value. It makes you reactive rather than proactive. This video will explore why relying on fairness weakens your position and how understanding reality as Machiavelli described it can make you stronger, more effective, and ultimately more successful. We'll examine how to build real strength through strategic thinking, personal capability, and understanding human nature. So here's your first reality check. Instead of asking, "Why isn't life fair to me?" start asking, "How can I succeed regardless of whether life is fair?" Write it in the comments if this perspective shift resonates. Strength over fairness. By the end of this video, you'll understand how to stop being someone who depends on fairness and start becoming someone who creates their own success through capability and strategic thinking. Number 1. Fairness is a comforting illusion that weakens you. Fairness feels good to believe in. It promises that effort will be rewarded, that justice will prevail, and that good behavior will be recognized. But this belief, while emotionally comforting, creates a fundamental weakness. It makes you dependent on external validation and recognition rather than internal capability and value creation. When you operate on the assumption that fairness will determine your outcomes, you develop what psychologists call an external locus of control. You believe that your success depends primarily on how others treat you, whether opportunities are distributed fairly, and whether recognition comes when you deserve it. This mindset inherently weakens your position because it places your success in other people's hands. Consider how this plays out in real situations. You work hard on a project and expect recognition, but someone else gets the credit. You follow all the rules and expect advancement, but the promotion goes to someone with better relationships. You provide excellent service and expect loyalty, but customers choose based on convenience or price. Each of these situations creates frustration and disappointment when viewed through the lens of fairness. Machiavelli understood this dynamic. He who seeks to deceive will always find someone who allows himself to be deceived. When you expect fairness, you become vulnerable to those who understand that fairness isn't the primary operating principle of human interactions. You become predictable and exploitable because your actions are based on idealistic expectations rather than realistic assessments. The weakness of fairness dependence manifests in several ways. First, it creates emotional volatility. Your mood and motivation fluctuate based on whether you feel you're being treated fairly. Second, it generates resentment when fairness doesn't materialize, which clouds your judgment and decision-making. Third, it makes you passive, waiting for others to recognize your worth rather than actively demonstrating and building it. This doesn't mean abandoning ethical behavior or treating others poorly. It means understanding that ethical behavior is valuable for its own sake and for building trust and relationships, not because it guarantees fair treatment in return. You can be ethical while still being strategic about how you navigate situations where others might not operate ethically. The alternative to fairness dependence is capability dependence. Instead of relying on fair treatment, you rely on your ability to create value, solve problems, build relationships, and navigate challenges. Instead of waiting for recognition, you focus on building undeniable competence. Instead of expecting others to play fair, you develop the skills to succeed, even when they don't. This shift from fairness dependence to capability dependence represents a fundamental change in how you approach challenges and opportunities. You stop asking, "Is this fair?" and start asking, "How can I handle this effectively?" You stop waiting for ideal conditions and start creating better outcomes through strategic action. Building capability-based strength requires developing specific skills and mindsets. These include emotional regulation, maintaining effectiveness regardless of how others behave, strategic thinking, understanding situations beyond surface appearances, value creation, focusing on results rather than just effort, and relationship management, building alliances based on mutual benefit rather than just fairness. The psychological shift away from fairness dependence is initially uncomfortable because it requires taking more responsibility for your outcomes. It's easier to blame unfairness than to analyze what you could do differently. But this discomfort leads to greater personal power because you stop being a victim of circumstances and start being a creator of them. Real strength comes from the ability to succeed, regardless of whether others treat you fairly. This doesn't mean becoming cynical or manipulative. It means becoming realistic and capable. You can still prefer fair treatment and work to create fair systems while not depending on fairness for your personal success. When you encounter unfair treatment, instead of focusing on the unfairness, ask yourself 3 questions. What can I learn from this situation? How can I protect myself from similar situations in the future? What capabilities do I need to develop to be less vulnerable to others' unfair behavior? Remember, those who depend on fairness remain at the mercy of others' sense of justice. Those who develop capability become capable of creating their own justice through competence and strategic action. Number 2, understanding human nature creates strategic advantage. Most people operate on idealistic assumptions about human behavior. They expect others to be consistently rational, grateful, loyal, and fair. This creates blind spots that lead to poor decisions, wasted resources, and missed opportunities. Understanding human nature as it actually is, rather than as we hope it might be, creates significant strategic advantages. Machiavelli's observations about human nature weren't meant to promote cynicism, but to provide realistic foundations for effective decision-making. When he wrote that people are ungrateful, fickle, liars and deceivers, he wasn't saying all people are evil. He was saying these tendencies exist in human nature and become more prominent when people feel pressured, threatened, or tempted. Understanding these tendencies doesn't mean expecting the worst from everyone, but rather preparing for the possibility that self-interest might override other considerations when stakes are high. This preparation allows you to make better decisions about trust, delegation, partnerships, and resource allocation. Human nature includes both cooperative and competitive elements, both generous and selfish impulses, both honest and deceptive capabilities. The specific behaviors that emerge depend on circumstances, incentives, and individual character development. Those who understand this complexity can better predict behavior and design interactions that bring out more positive responses. For example, people are more likely to be honest when honesty is rewarded and dishonesty is penalized. They're more likely to be loyal when loyalty is reciprocated and disloyalty has consequences. They're more likely to be fair when fairness serves their interests and unfairness costs them relationships or opportunities. This understanding allows you to create better incentive structures in your personal and professional relationships. Instead of just hoping people will behave well, you can design situations where good behavior is rewarded and poor behavior has natural consequences. This isn't manipulation, it's creating environments that encourage everyone's better angels. Understanding human nature also helps you recognize patterns of behavior that others miss. You can identify when someone is likely to change positions, when loyalty might waver, when partnerships might become competitive, or when cooperation might turn into conflict. This awareness allows you to prepare for changes rather than being surprised by them. The strategic advantage of understanding human nature extends to reading social dynamics, predicting market behavior, and building more effective teams. People who understand motivation, fear, greed, pride, and other driving forces can better anticipate how situations will develop and position themselves accordingly. This doesn't mean becoming manipulative or exploitative. Understanding human nature can actually help you build better relationships by recognizing what people need, what they fear, and what motivates them. When you understand someone's underlying drivers, you can communicate more effectively and create proposals that genuinely serve their interests while also serving yours. The key insight is that human behavior follows patterns, even though individual actions can be unpredictable. These patterns become more apparent when you study history, observe social dynamics, and pay attention to how people respond to different incentives and pressures over time. Building this understanding requires both study and observation. Reading about psychology, history, and human behavior provides frameworks for understanding. Observing people in various situations provides real-world data about how these frameworks apply. The combination creates practical wisdom about human nature. One crucial aspect of human nature is that people tend to act in what they perceive as their self-interest, even when their perception might be flawed or short-sighted. Understanding this helps you predict behavior and design interactions that align others' self-interest with your objectives. Another important pattern is that people respond to incentives more than to appeals to abstract principles. While moral arguments have some influence, concrete benefits and consequences usually have more impact on behavior. This doesn't mean abandoning moral arguments, but rather combining them with practical incentives. Before entering important interactions, or making significant decisions involving other people, consider their likely motivations, fears, and self-interest. How might they respond to different approaches? What incentives exist in the situation? How can you structure interactions to encourage positive responses while protecting yourself from negative ones? Understanding human nature isn't about becoming cynical, it's about becoming realistic and effective. When you understand how people actually behave, you can build better relationships, make better decisions, and create better outcomes for everyone involved. Your key insight for this section: understanding human nature creates strategic advantage. Share this in the comments and think about one relationship or situation where better understanding of underlying motivations could improve your effectiveness. Number 3. Complaining about unfairness signals and creates weakness. When you vocalize complaints about unfair treatment, you inadvertently signal to others that you see yourself as a victim of circumstances rather than as someone capable of changing them. This perception, both from others and from yourself, creates real weakness by reinforcing a victim mentality and inviting further unfair treatment. Complaining about unfairness serves several psychological functions that feel satisfying in the moment, but weaken your position over time. It provides emotional release, seeks sympathy and validation, and attempts to shame others into better behavior. However, these short-term benefits come at the cost of long-term effectiveness and respect. Others' reactions to complaints about unfairness reveal important truths about social dynamics. Some people will offer sympathy, but this sympathy rarely translates into changed behavior or improved treatment. Others will see the complaining as evidence of weakness and may consciously or unconsciously take advantage of what they perceive as a vulnerable position. Machiavelli observed that men should be either treated generously or destroyed, because they take revenge for slight injuries but cannot do so for grave ones. This principle applies to how you handle unfair treatment. Constant complaining about minor unfairness makes you appear weak and invites further testing of your boundaries, while decisive action in response to serious unfairness commands respect. The habit of complaining about unfairness also reinforces internal narratives that weaken your mindset. Each time you verbalize how unfairly you're being treated, you strengthen the neural pathways associated with victimhood, powerlessness, and external blame. This makes it harder to develop the mental strength necessary for strategic thinking and effective action. Additionally, focusing on unfairness directs your mental energy toward things you cannot control, other people's behavior, rather than things you can control, your own responses and capabilities. This misdirection of attention and energy prevents you from developing the skills and strategies that would make you less vulnerable to unfair treatment. The alternative to complaining about unfairness is strategic response. This involves analyzing the situation to understand why the unfair treatment is occurring, what you can learn from it, how you can protect yourself from similar situations, and what actions might improve your position without depending on others' sense of fairness. Strategic response requires emotional regulation, the ability to process frustration and disappointment without letting these emotions drive your external behavior. This doesn't mean suppressing emotions, but rather channeling them into productive analysis and action rather than counterproductive complaining. When unfair treatment occurs, strategic thinkers ask different questions than those who rely on fairness. Instead of, "Why is this happening to me?" they ask, "What does this tell me about the situation and the people involved?" Instead of, "How can I make them treat me fairly?" they ask, "How can I change my approach to get better results?" This shift from complaint-focused to solution-focused thinking builds mental strength and practical capability. Each time you respond strategically rather than just emotionally to unfair treatment, you develop greater resilience and effectiveness. Over time, this pattern creates a reputation for strength rather than victimhood. There are times when addressing unfair treatment directly is appropriate and necessary. The key difference is between complaining, expressing frustration without proposing solutions, and assertive communication, clearly stating problems and proposing specific changes. Assertive communication focuses on behavior and outcomes rather than fairness and feelings. The social dynamics around unfairness complaints are particularly important in professional settings. Colleagues and supervisors often view frequent complaints about unfair treatment as evidence of poor judgment, inability to handle challenges, or lack of strategic thinking. This perception can limit advancement opportunities regardless of whether the complaints are justified. Building the habit of strategic response instead of complaining requires conscious practice. When you feel the urge to complain about unfair treatment, pause and redirect that energy into analysis and planning. What factors contributed to this situation? What patterns can you identify? What changes in your approach might prevent or minimize similar problems in the future? This doesn't mean accepting truly inappropriate behavior or systemic unfairness without response. Rather, it means choosing your battles carefully and responding strategically when action is warranted, rather than dissipating your energy through constant complaints about minor unfairness. For the next week, notice when you feel the urge to complain about unfair treatment. Instead of voicing the complaint, write down the situation and ask yourself, what can I learn from this? What capability would help me handle similar situations better? What strategic response might improve future outcomes? Remember, complaints about unfairness signal weakness and invite further testing. Strategic responses to unfairness demonstrate strength and often improve your treatment over time. Your insight for this section. Strategic response builds strength. Complaining signals weakness. Write this in the comments and commit to channeling frustration about unfair treatment into strategic thinking and capability building instead of complaints. Number 4. Building personal power through competence, not entitlement. True personal power comes from your ability to create value, solve problems, and achieve results regardless of external conditions. This competence-based power is sustainable and respected because it's based on actual capability rather than claims about what you deserve. Understanding this distinction is crucial for building real strength and effectiveness. Entitlement-based thinking assumes that certain treatments, opportunities, or outcomes should come to you based on your effort, credentials, or moral behavior. This creates dependency on others' recognition and validation, making your success contingent on external judgment rather than internal capability. Competence-based thinking focuses on developing skills, knowledge, and capabilities that make you valuable, regardless of whether others treat you fairly. This approach builds genuine power because it makes you less dependent on others' goodwill and more capable of creating your own opportunities and solutions. The difference becomes clear in practical situations. When passed over for a promotion, entitlement-based thinking focuses on the unfairness of the decision and seeks validation that you deserved better treatment. Competence-based thinking analyzes what skills, relationships, or achievements would make you undeniably qualified for similar opportunities in the future. Machiavelli understood that power based on others' good favor is inherently unstable. He who builds his power on the people builds on mud. While building relationships and earning respect are important, Sustainable power must be grounded in your ability to deliver results that others need or want. Building competence-based power requires identifying what value you can create that others find difficult to replace or ignore. This might be technical skills, problem-solving abilities, relationship-building capabilities, or unique combinations of knowledge and experience. The key is developing capabilities that make you genuinely valuable, rather than just claiming you should be treated better. This approach also involves understanding market dynamics, what skills, knowledge, and capabilities are becoming more valuable versus less valuable. Instead of expecting recognition for past achievements or existing skills, competence-based thinking involves continuously developing new capabilities that align with changing needs and opportunities. Personal power built through competence tends to compound over time. Each problem you solve, each skill you develop, and each result you achieve builds your reputation and opens new opportunities. This creates an upward spiral where competence leads to opportunities, which lead to new learning and capabilities, which create even better opportunities. The mindset shift from entitlement to competence also changes how you respond to setbacks and challenges. Instead of seeing unfair treatment as evidence of others' failings, you see it as information about what capabilities you need to develop to be less vulnerable to others' unfair behavior. Competence-based power also involves understanding and developing emotional intelligence, the ability to understand and manage your own emotions while effectively influencing others' emotional responses. This includes communication skills, empathy, persuasion abilities, and social awareness that help you navigate complex interpersonal dynamics. Another crucial aspect is learning to create systems and processes that produce consistent results. Instead of relying on individual heroic efforts or hoping others will treat you fairly, you develop repeatable methods for achieving objectives. This systematic approach to competence makes your success more predictable and less dependent on external factors. Building genuine competence also requires intellectual humility, recognizing that your current knowledge and skills can always be improved. This openness to learning and growth keeps you adaptable and prevents the stagnation that comes from assuming you already know everything you need to know. The networking aspect of competence-based power involves building relationships based on mutual value creation rather than just personal liking or shared grievances about unfair treatment. When you can help others achieve their objectives through your capabilities, you build stronger and more durable professional relationships. There's also a leadership component to competence-based power. As you develop genuine capabilities, others naturally begin to seek your advice, input, and leadership on challenging problems. This organic leadership development is more sustainable than leadership based on titles, credentials, or claims about deserving authority. First, identify the problems and challenges that people in your field or area of interest face most frequently. Second, develop specific capabilities for solving these problems more effectively than others can. Third, consistently demonstrate these capabilities through your work and interactions. Fourth, continuously update and expand your capabilities as conditions change. Building competence-based power takes time and sustained effort, but it creates genuine strength that others respect and that you can rely on regardless of how fairly others treat you. It transforms you from someone who needs others' fair treatment to someone who provides value that others need. Your key insight for this section: competence creates sustainable power. Entitlement creates dependency. Write this in the comments and identify one capability you could develop that would make you more valuable and less dependent on others' fair treatment. Number 5. Strategic thinking trumps moral outrage. When faced with unfair situations, the natural emotional response is moral outrage, anger at the injustice, indignation at the violation of principles, and desire to punish those responsible. While these emotions are understandable and sometimes necessary for motivation, they often interfere with effective problem-solving and strategic response. Strategic thinking involves analyzing situations based on what is, rather than what should be, understanding the motivations and constraints of all parties involved, and developing responses that maximize your long-term effectiveness rather than just providing emotional satisfaction in the moment. The limitation of moral outrage as a primary response is that it focuses on changing others' behavior rather than adapting your own approach to achieve better outcomes. This external focus often leads to frustration and ineffectiveness because you cannot directly control others' actions, only your own responses to their actions. Machiavelli wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." This insight highlights the importance of strategic presentation and behavior management. Instead of letting moral outrage drive your visible responses, strategic thinking allows you to choose responses that serve your long-term interests while still maintaining your ethical principles. Strategic thinking doesn't mean abandoning moral principles or accepting unethical behavior. Rather, it means being strategic about how and when you address moral concerns to maximize their effectiveness. Sometimes direct confrontation works best. Sometimes indirect approaches are more effective. Sometimes strategic withdrawal and repositioning serve better than immediate engagement. The key distinction is between being strategic about your methods while remaining consistent about your objectives and values. You can maintain ethical standards while being flexible about tactics. You can pursue just outcomes while being realistic about human nature and social dynamics. Consider how this applies to workplace situations. When a colleague takes credit for your work, moral outrage might drive you to publicly confront them or complain to others about the unfairness. Strategic thinking might lead you to document your contributions more carefully, build stronger relationships with decision-makers, or find ways to make your contributions more visible and difficult to claim credit for. Both approaches address the same underlying problem, but the strategic approach is more likely to prevent future occurrences and improve your overall position, while the moral outrage approach might provide emotional satisfaction without solving the underlying issue. Strategic thinking also involves longer time horizons than moral outrage typically considers. Immediate justice might feel satisfying, but strategic thinkers consider how their responses will affect relationships, reputation, and future opportunities. Sometimes accepting short-term unfairness while building longer-term strength leads to better ultimate outcomes. This doesn't mean being passive or accepting unethical behavior indefinitely. Strategic thinking often leads to more effective responses to unfair treatment, but these responses are planned and executed with consideration for multiple factors rather than just immediate emotional reactions. The development of strategic thinking skills involves learning to separate emotional responses from analytical responses. You can acknowledge and process emotions while not letting them determine your strategic choices. This emotional regulation is crucial for maintaining effectiveness under pressure. Strategic thinking also requires understanding systems and patterns rather than just individual events. When someone treats you unfairly, strategic analysis considers whether this is typical behavior for this person, what incentives and pressures might be influencing their behavior, and what systemic changes might prevent similar situations. Another aspect involves understanding power dynamics and influence patterns. Who has decision-making authority? What motivates them? How do they receive and process information? What approaches are most likely to influence their thinking? These considerations often lead to more effective responses than direct moral arguments. The practice of strategic thinking becomes easier with experience and conscious development. Each situation where you choose strategic analysis over immediate emotional reaction builds your capability for this type of thinking. Over time, strategic analysis becomes more automatic and natural. There are certainly times when immediate moral response is necessary and appropriate, particularly in cases involving serious ethical violations or abuse. The key is developing the judgment to distinguish between situations that require immediate moral action and situations where strategic approaches might be more effective. When facing unfair treatment, first process your emotional response privately, then analyze the situation strategically. What are the underlying causes? What are the various stakeholders' motivations? What responses would be most likely to prevent future similar situations and improve your position? Finally, choose actions that align with your values while maximizing effectiveness. Remember, moral outrage focuses on what should be. Strategic thinking focuses on what is and how to improve it. Both have their place, but strategic thinking usually produces better long-term outcomes. Number 6. Creating your own success standards. The final step in moving beyond fairness dependence is creating your own standards for success, rather than relying on external validation or recognition. This shift from external to internal scorekeeping makes you less vulnerable to others' unfair treatment and more capable of maintaining motivation and direction regardless of how others respond to your efforts. External success standards depend on others' judgments, recognition systems, and fairness in distribution of rewards. These standards make you vulnerable because they place your sense of achievement and motivation in other people's hands. When recognition doesn't come, when rewards aren't distributed fairly, or when your contributions aren't acknowledged, external standards leave you feeling unsuccessful despite your actual accomplishments. Internal success standards are based on your own assessment of your progress, capability development, value creation, and achievement of personally meaningful objectives. These standards provide more consistent motivation because they don't depend on others' judgment or treatment. You can feel successful and maintain motivation even when external recognition is delayed or absent. This doesn't mean ignoring external feedback or becoming disconnected from others' needs and expectations. Rather, it means developing the ability to evaluate your own performance and progress, independent of external validation, while still being responsive to useful feedback and market signals. Machiavelli understood the importance of self-reliance in judgment. He who becomes master of his own destiny is feared by all who depend on chance. Creating your own success standards is part of becoming master of your own destiny, rather than remaining dependent on others' sense of fairness or recognition systems. Internal success standards typically focus on factors you can directly control: the effort you invest, the skills you develop, the value you create, the problems you solve, and the progress you make toward meaningful objectives. These factors remain within your influence regardless of how others treat you or whether external recognition systems operate fairly. Developing meaningful internal standards requires clarity about what you're trying to achieve and why it matters to you personally. This involves identifying your core values, long-term objectives, and the specific capabilities you want to develop. With this clarity, you can create metrics and milestones that provide meaningful feedback about your progress, independent of external validation. The psychological benefit of internal success standards is significant. Instead of your mood and motivation fluctuating based on others' treatment, they remain more stable because they're based on factors you control. This emotional stability improves decision-making and maintains effectiveness even during periods when external recognition is lacking. Internal standards also allow for more rapid learning and adaptation. Instead of waiting for others to provide feedback about your performance, you can assess your own effectiveness and make adjustments quickly. This faster feedback loop accelerates improvement and skill development. Creating internal success standards doesn't mean lowering expectations or accepting mediocrity. Often, internal standards are actually higher than external ones because they reflect your personal commitment to excellence rather than just meeting others' minimum expectations. The difference is that these higher standards are self-imposed rather than externally imposed. The practice of internal scorekeeping also builds confidence and self-reliance over time. Each time you achieve objectives you've set for yourself, you build evidence of your capability and judgment. This accumulated evidence of self-efficacy makes you less dependent on external validation for confidence and motivation. There's also a strategic advantage to internal success standards. When you're not dependent on external recognition for motivation, you can take on challenging projects, pursue innovative approaches, and invest in long-term capability development without requiring immediate external validation. This often leads to breakthrough achievements that eventually do receive external recognition. Balancing internal and external standards involves being guided primarily by internal standards while remaining aware of and responsive to external feedback and market conditions. You maintain the motivation and direction that comes from internal standards while adapting your approach based on external information. The development of internal success standards is an iterative process. You start with your best understanding of what meaningful achievement looks like for you personally, then refine these standards based on experience and changing circumstances. The key is maintaining the internal locus of control while allowing the specific standards to evolve. First, identify what you want to achieve, independent of others' recognition or treatment. Second, break these objectives down into specific, measurable milestones that you can assess independently. Third, create regular review processes where you evaluate your progress against these internal standards. Fourth, celebrate achievements of internal milestones, regardless of whether they receive external recognition. Building internal success standards takes time and conscious effort, but it creates genuine independence and strength. You become someone who can maintain motivation and effectiveness, regardless of external conditions or treatment. Your final insight for this section: internal success standards create independence from external validation. Write this in the comments and identify one area where you could develop internal metrics for success that don't depend on others' recognition or fair treatment. Throughout this exploration of why begging for fairness weakens you and how Machiavellian thinking can build strength, we've uncovered fundamental principles that separate those who remain victims of unfair treatment from those who build genuine power and effectiveness, regardless of how others behave. Depending on fairness for your success makes you vulnerable to others' decisions about how to treat you, while building capability-based strength makes you effective regardless of whether others treat you fairly. This shift from external dependence to internal capability represents the difference between weakness and strength in navigating an unfair world. We've established that fairness, while emotionally comforting to believe in, creates practical weakness by making you dependent on others' sense of justice rather than your own ability to create results. When you expect fair treatment, you become vulnerable to disappointment, frustration, and manipulation by those who understand that fairness isn't the primary governing principle of human interactions. Understanding human nature as Machiavelli described it, complex, self-interested, and influenced by circumstances, provides strategic advantages in predicting behavior, building relationships, and designing interactions that produce better outcomes. This realistic understanding allows for better decision-making than idealistic assumptions about how people should behave. Complaining about unfair treatment signals weakness to others and reinforces victim mentality in yourself, while strategic responses to unfairness demonstrate strength and often improve your treatment over time. The energy that goes into complaining about what others do to you could be redirected into building capabilities that make you less vulnerable to their unfair behavior. Personal power, built through competence and value creation, is more sustainable than power based on entitlement or others' sense of fairness. When you can solve problems, create value, and achieve results regardless of external conditions, you build genuine strength that others respect and that serves you consistently. Strategic thinking produces better long-term outcomes than moral outrage alone because it focuses on effective responses to reality rather than just emotional reactions to unfairness. While moral principles remain important, strategic implementation of these principles typically achieves better results than purely emotional responses. Creating internal success standards makes you less dependent on external validation and recognition, providing more consistent motivation and clearer direction for improvement. When your sense of achievement depends primarily on your own assessment of progress and capability development, you become less vulnerable to others' unfair treatment or lack of recognition. The integration of these principles creates a powerful approach to building strength in an unfair world. Instead of expecting fair treatment, develop capabilities that make you valuable regardless of how others behave. Instead of complaining about unfairness, respond strategically to improve your position and prevent similar situations. Instead of depending on others' recognition, create internal standards that guide your development and achievement. This approach requires fundamental mindset shifts from reactive to proactive, from external dependence to internal capability, from emotional responses to strategic thinking, and from fairness expectations to reality-based planning. These shifts can feel uncomfortable initially because they require taking more responsibility for your outcomes, but they ultimately create greater personal power and effectiveness. The practical implementation begins immediately with these specific actions. Stop waiting for others to treat you fairly and start building capabilities that make you less vulnerable to their unfair treatment. Stop complaining about unfair situations and start analyzing them strategically to understand what you can learn and how you can improve your position. Stop depending on external recognition for motivation and start creating internal metrics for success and progress. Remember that this approach isn't about becoming unethical, manipulative, or cynical. It's about understanding reality clearly and building genuine strength to navigate it effectively. You can maintain high ethical standards while being strategic about methods. You can treat others fairly while not depending on their fair treatment for your success. The Machiavellian wisdom we've explored provides tools for effectiveness, not templates for unethical behavior. Understanding human nature, thinking strategically, and building genuine capability serve you better than naive expectations about fairness and idealistic assumptions about human behavior. Your transformation from someone who depends on fairness to someone who builds strategic strength begins with your next response to unfair treatment. Will you complain about the unfairness and wait for better treatment? Or will you analyze the situation strategically and focus on building capabilities that make you less vulnerable to similar unfairness in the future? The choice determines whether you remain weak in an unfair world or become strong enough to succeed, regardless of whether others treat you fairly. True strength comes not from others' fair treatment, but from your ability to create value, solve problems, and achieve objectives, whether or not others play by the rules you prefer. If this perspective on building strength through strategic thinking rather than fairness expectations resonates with your experience and ambitions, demonstrate your commitment by engaging with this content. Like this video to acknowledge your understanding that strength comes from capability, not from expecting fair treatment. Share it with someone who would benefit from understanding these principles of strategic strength building. Subscribe for more content that explores practical wisdom for navigating reality as it is rather than as we wish it were. Because the future belongs not to those who wait for fair treatment, but to those who build the strength to succeed, regardless of whether life treats them fairly. Your ultimate commitment. I choose strategic strength over fairness dependence. Carry this mindset forward and watch how it transforms not just your outcomes, but your entire approach to challenges, setbacks, and opportunities. Because when you stop begging for fairness and start building real strength, you become someone others respect and someone who can create success regardless of external conditions.